Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, thanks very much for your time. I want to start with the issue that's dominated the first week, and that is your renewed diplomatic push. Penny Wong's been in the Pacific. She met with the Fijian Prime Minister. What's been the reaction you've had about your approach on foreign policy and the Pacific from Pacific leaders? Are you optimistic that Australia can resist this push for a greater presence in the region by China?
Well, the response has been very positive. We went to the election with a positive plan for the Pacific that involved increased cooperation with regard to defence, including a defence training school, increased support for maritime security, increased aid of over $500 million, increased action on climate change, including infrastructure required in the Pacific to deal with the challenge of climate change, but also increased parliamentary visits and exchanges, increased work programs for both temporary workers but also a permanent migration program specifically for people of the Pacific. All of this adds up to a re-engagement by Australia with the Pacific that is so important. It was one of the focuses as well, of course, of the Quad Leaders meeting I attended in Tokyo with President Biden, Prime Minister Kishida and Prime Minister Modi. And it has been a very positive start to the government re-engaging in diplomatic activity in our region.
The former Foreign Minister proposed a doubling of aid to the Pacific and to the Solomons to try and stop what we saw eventuated with that security deal. Apparently, according to a source out of the National Security Committee of the former government to me, that they told me the reason it was knocked back is because even if we doubled aid, there's no guarantee that a Chinese base won't be built anyway. What do you say to that sort of reasoning?
Well, these are sovereign nations, of course, and we need to respect that. But at the same time, the idea that Australia hasn't suffered from the massive cut in aid that occurred when the former coalition government was first elected just defies the evidence which is there, as well as a non-engagement on values. For our Pacific Island neighbours, the issue of climate change is an absolute national security issue. It's one that the United States and the Biden administration certainly recognise it as that as well. And it is astonishing that you had a submission from the Foreign Minister Payne, supported by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, saying this would make a positive difference to Australia's standing in the region, as well as, on its own merit, a responsibility that we have to assist development in our region. The fact that that was knocked back last year just shows, I think, a complacency on behalf of the former government, and that they had dropped the ball.